The Hessdalen Lights. There's a valley in central Norway, remote and sparsely populated, where the sky puts on a show that defies all logical explanation. This isn't the familiar, ethereal dance of the aurora borealis. This is something stranger, more localized, and far more baffling. Welcome to Hessdalen, the home of a persistent, decade-spanning UFO phenomenon that has drawn scientists from across the globe, all trying to answer one simple question: what in the world are those lights? Since at least the 1940s and intensifying dramatically in the early 1980s, residents and researchers have documented bizarre, unexplained lights in the sky. These aren't just faint, distant twinkles. They are brilliant orbs of white, yellow, or red light that can hang motionless for up to an hour, only to suddenly streak across the valley at impossible speeds. They've been observed as massive, silent, glowing objects the size of cars, sometimes hovering just meters above the ground. They perform aerial maneuvers that would crush any known pilot, splitting into smaller lights, pulsing with intelligent rhythm, and appearing and disappearing at will. In the peak period from 1981 to 1984, there were as many as 20 reported sightings a week. This isn't folklore. It's a documented, ongoing anomaly, captured on film, tracked on radar, and analyzed by spectrograph. The initial, easy explanations were quickly dismissed. These aren't aircraft. They make no sound and move in ways no conventional plane or helicopter can. They aren't stars or planets. They fly below the cloud line and navigate the valley's terrain. They aren't car headlights. They appear high in the sky, far from any roads. The phenomenon was so persistent and so strange that in 1998, the Hessdalen AMS, an automatic scientific research station, was established to monitor the valley 24/7. The station's findings only deepened the mystery. The lights are real, physical phenomena. Radar confirms their presence and tracks their incredible velocity. Spectrographic analysis of the light itself has yielded baffling results. It doesn't match the signature of any known, simple combustion process. Instead, the data suggests the lights are composed of a plasma of ionized gas containing elements common to the valley: silicon, iron, scandium, and titanium, but heated to an extreme temperature, around 60,500 Kelvin, which is hotter than the surface of the sun. So what's the prevailing theory? This isn't aliens, but it might be one of the most exotic natural battery systems on Earth. The leading hypothesis, proposed by researchers like Dr. Bjorn Gettel, centers on the unique geology of the valley itself. The valley floor is divided by the Hesja River. One side is rich in iron, while the other is rich in zinc and copper. The river water, containing sulfur from old local mines, acts as an electrolyte, a conductive medium. In essence, the entire Hessdalen Valley may function as a giant natural battery. This geological setup could create a powerful electromagnetic field. The theory posits that this field ionizes the air and dust, creating pockets of plasma that glow brightly. The plasma is contained and shaped by the local magnetic field lines, allowing it to hover, move, and behave in the bizarre ways observed. The energy source is the Earth itself, and the lights are a visible manifestation of that raw geological power. Other theories suggest a form of piezoelectricity, where the immense strain on the valley's quartz crystals generates an electrical charge, or even interactions with cosmic rays. The Hessdalen phenomenon isn't a case of physics breaking down. It's a case of physics operating in a way we are only just beginning to comprehend, turning a quiet Norwegian valley into a natural laboratory for planetary energy. The magnetic hill of Moncton. In Moncton, New Brunswick, there is a stretch of road where the fundamental laws of gravity appear to take a vacation. For generations, locals and tourists have driven their cars to the bottom of what is clearly a hill, put their vehicle in neutral, and watched in utter disbelief as it proceeds to roll, seemingly uphill, all on its own. Water poured onto the pavement flows the wrong way. Balls placed on the asphalt defy the pull of the earth and accelerate up the incline. It's a place that has baffled visitors for nearly a century, a localized glitch in the matrix where the rules we take for granted are inverted. The experience is genuinely uncanny. You are staring at a slope. Your brain, your eyes, every instinct you have tells you that an object should roll down it. Yet, when you release the brake, you feel a gentle but undeniable acceleration in the opposite direction. The car picks up speed, cruising effortlessly up the hill as if being pulled by an invisible cable. It's such a convincing and powerful effect that it became one of Canada's most famous tourist attractions. A place where people could pay a small fee to experience the impossible. For years, the explanations were as wild as the phenomenon itself. Local legends spoke of supernatural forces, of powerful magnetic fields buried beneath the road, capable of pulling multi-ton vehicles. The place was dubbed Magnetic Hill, a name that has stuck for decades, cementing the idea of a mysterious, unseen force at play. But the truth is, the magnet isn't in the hill, it's in your head. The Magnetic Hill of Moncton is one of the world's most perfect examples of a gravity hill, a specific and fascinating type of optical illusion. The physics of gravity aren't breaking down here. Your brain's ability to perceive the landscape correctly is. The trick lies in the horizon, or more accurately, the complete lack of one. The surrounding landscape is configured in such a way that it completely skews your sense of perspective. The trees, the slopes of the adjacent land, and the curve of the road itself all conspire to create a false horizon. What you perceive as an uphill slope is, in reality, a very slight downhill slope. The entire landscape is tilted, but your brain refuses to accept it. It latches onto the misleading visual cues, like trees that appear to be growing straight up but are actually on a slope, to establish what it thinks is level ground. Compared to this false tilted baseline, the gentle downhill slope of the road appears to be an impossible uphill climb. Scientists and surveyors have confirmed this with GPS and sensitive leveling equipment. When you remove the flawed human eye from the equation, the data is unequivocal. The starting point of the uphill roll is measurably higher than the end point. The car is simply doing what gravity dictates. The magnetic hill isn't a geological anomaly, it's a neurological one. It's a powerful reminder that our perception of reality is not a direct recording of the world, but an interpretation, a model built by our brains. And sometimes that model can be spectacularly, convincingly wrong. The Devil's Kettle. Along the north shore of Lake Superior, in Minnesota's Judge C.R. Magny State Park, the Brule River does something that for centuries has seemed physically impossible. As it flows through a gorge of ancient volcanic rock, the river splits at a massive outcrop. The eastern fork continues on its merry way, cascading down a series of waterfalls before emptying into the lake. But the western fork is where reality gets weird. This entire half of the river plunges into a deep, cavernous pothole in the rock, a chasm known as the Devil's Kettle, and vanishes. Completely. We're not talking about a trickle of water disappearing into a crack. We're talking about a significant volume of roaring, powerful river water pouring into a hole in the ground, never to be seen again. The mystery has been an obsession for generations of geologists, hikers, and conspiracy theorists. Where does all that water go? The most logical assumption would be that it flows through some underground passage and re-emerges somewhere downstream or out in Lake Superior. The problem is, no one has ever been able to prove it. The search for the kettle's outlet has led to some truly bizarre experiments. Researchers have thrown everything imaginable into the churning maw of the Devil's Kettle, hoping to see it pop up somewhere else. They've tossed in brightly colored dyes, thousands of ping pong balls, even GPS trackers. The result? Nothing. The dye is never seen again. The ping pong balls never surface. The tracker's signals are lost forever. It's as if half of the Brule River simply ceases to exist. This has led to all sorts of wild speculation. Theories ranged from a massive, undiscovered underground cave system that drains into a subterranean lake, to a direct geological fault line that funnels the water miles deep into the Earth's crust. Some even half-joked that the kettle was a portal to another dimension. The phenomenon seemed to defy a fundamental law of physics, the conservation of mass. Water, like matter, cannot simply be created or destroyed. It has to go somewhere. For decades, the Devil's Kettle remained one of geology's most perplexing and popular unsolved mysteries. But in 2017, hydrologists from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources finally cracked the case, and the solution is both brilliantly simple and a little bit anticlimactic. They didn't need ping pong balls, they needed a tool to measure water volume. The scientists measured the flow rate of the river both above the split and below the waterfall where the eastern fork rejoins the main channel. What they found was telling. The flow rate above the falls was 123 cubic feet per second. The flow rate below the falls, where the river should have been missing half its volume, it was almost exactly the same, 121 cubic feet per second. The numbers didn't lie, there was no disappearing water. The water plunging into the Devil's Kettle wasn't being transported to Narnia. It was simply rejoining the main river almost immediately, just beneath the surface of the plunge pool of the main waterfall. The reason no one ever saw the dye or the ping-pong balls is because the force of the water inside the kettle is so incredibly violent. The churning, grinding action of the water and sediment pulverizes anything thrown into it, holding it under until it's been ground into oblivion before spitting the water out a few feet downstream. The Devil's Kettle isn't a portal to another dimension. It's just a brutally efficient, geologically formed blender. The mystery wasn't where the water went, but how it was possible that it could reappear so close, yet remain so completely hidden for so long. The Doubletree of Casorzo. In the rolling hills of Piedmont, Italy, between the towns of Grana and Casorzo, stands a botanical anomaly that looks like something straight out of a fantasy novel. It is a single cherry tree, lush and healthy, growing directly out of the top of a mulberry tree. This isn't a case of two trees growing close together and intertwining. The cherry tree is perched majestically atop the mulberry's hollow trunk, its roots delving deep inside its host, creating a bizarre, two-tiered botanical wonder known locally as the Albero di Casorzo, or the Doubletree of Casorzo. This isn't just a sapling. The cherry tree is a large, mature, and fruit-bearing tree. Both it and its mulberry host appear to be in perfect health, thriving together in a partnership that shouldn't be possible. Normally, when a plant attempts to grow parasitically on another, it's a small, struggling specimen that rarely reaches maturity. The host tree's resources are typically insufficient to support a second, full-sized organism. Yet the Doubletree of Casorzo defies this expectation. It is two distinct, robust trees, one living on top of the other, sharing a single spot on the earth. How did this happen? The most likely explanation is a beautiful accident of nature. It's believed that a bird, at some point decades ago, dropped a cherry pit onto the top of the mulberry tree. Mulberry trees can sometimes have hollow trunks, creating a space where soil, decomposing leaves, and moisture can accumulate. The cherry pit landed in this fertile pocket high above the ground and began to germinate. What makes this case so extraordinary is what happened next. The cherry tree's roots, in their search for more nutrients and water, managed to grow downward through the hollow trunk of the mulberry tree. They traveled all the way from their perch, snaking through the dark interior of their host, until they eventually reached the soil below. This is the secret to the Doubletree's survival and its impressive size. The cherry tree is not a true parasite. It is not slowly leaching the life from the mulberry. Instead, it has effectively used the mulberry tree as a living flower pot and a scaffold. Its roots have their own independent connection to the ground, allowing it to draw all the water and nutrients it needs to thrive as a full-size tree. The two trees are more like symbiotic roommates than a parasite and a host. They share the same space, but they have their own sources of sustenance. It's a 1 in a million botanical coincidence, a testament to the sheer tenacity of life to find a foothold in the most unlikely of places. The Doubletree doesn't break the laws of biology, it showcases their remarkable flexibility and resilience in a way that continues to captivate all who see it. The Kawah Ijen volcano. Deep in the heart of East Java, Indonesia, lies a volcano that bleeds blue fire. After darkness falls, the Kawah Ijen volcano offers one of the most surreal and otherworldly sights on the planet. Instead of the familiar orange and red glow of molten lava, rivers of electric blue light flow down its slopes. It's a spectacle that seems to defy the very nature of fire, a landscape plucked from a science fiction film, where the earth itself appears to burn with a mysterious, cold blue flame. For centuries, this phenomenon was a local legend, a bizarre spectacle that few outsiders witnessed. But with the advent of digital photography and the internet, images of Ijen's ethereal blue lava flows went viral, stunning the world and raising a fundamental question: how can lava burn blue? The truth is, it can't. the lava at Kawah Ijen is perfectly normal. It's the same searingly hot molten rock that glows with the typical reddish-orange hue you'd expect. The incredible blue light is not coming from the lava itself, but from something else emerging from the volcano under immense pressure and heat. Pure sulfuric gas. Kawah Ijen sits atop one of the world's most significant deposits of elemental sulfur. The volcano's fumaroles, or gas vents, constantly spew out huge quantities of this sulfuric gas, heated to temperatures exceeding 600 degrees Celsius. When this superheated gas bursts from the cracks in the rock and hits the oxygen-rich air, it immediately ignites. And when sulfur burns, it burns with a vibrant violet-blue flame. So what viewers are seeing is not blue lava, but a massive, sustained chemical reaction taking place on the surface of the lava flow. As the molten rock moves, it opens up new cracks and vents, releasing more gas which instantly combusts, creating the illusion of a flowing river of blue fire. Some of the gas also condenses into liquid sulfur, which then continues to burn as it runs down the mountain, adding to the spectacle. This natural wonder has a dark, human side. The volcano is also the site of a grueling, traditional sulfur mine. Each day, miners descend into the toxic crater, enduring the choking, poisonous fumes with minimal protection, to quarry the solidified yellow sulfur. They carry back-breaking loads of up to 90 kilograms, 200 pounds, up the steep crater rim and down the mountain. They work amidst this beautiful, deadly blue fire, a stark reminder that the same geological forces that can create sites of unparalleled wonder can also create some of the most hellish working conditions on Earth. Kawah Ijen doesn't break the laws of chemistry. It puts them on display in their most beautiful and brutal form. The eternal flame falls. Tucked away in a small nature preserve in western New York, there is a waterfall that houses an impossible flame. Behind the curtain of cascading water, inside a small grotto carved into the shale rock, a single flickering flame burns day and night. It persists through rain, wind, and the constant spray of the waterfall that surrounds it. This is the Eternal Flame Falls, a place where two of nature's most opposing elements, fire and water, coexist in a paradoxical and beautiful display. For years, the flame was a local curiosity, a charming anomaly that seemed to defy a simple law of nature. Fire needs fuel, and it doesn't like being wet. The flame's persistence led many to believe it was connected to some vast ancient reservoir of natural gas, a deep well that had been feeding the flame for centuries, perhaps even lit by Native Americans long ago. The initial geological assessment seemed to support this. The rock in the area is shale, a sedimentary rock known for trapping pockets of natural gas formed from decaying organic matter millions of years ago. The theory was that the intense pressure from the rock layers was forcing a steady stream of this ancient gas out through a crack, providing a constant fuel source. However, when geologists from Indiana University and the U.S. Geological Survey took a closer look, they found something that turned this simple explanation on its head. They analyzed the gas feeding the flame and found that it wasn't what they expected. It contained a much higher concentration of ethane and propane than typical natural gas from the region's shale. More importantly, they analyzed the rock itself. The shale in the grotto wasn't thermally mature. It wasn't old enough or buried deep enough to have been cooked at the high temperatures required to break down its organic material and create natural gas. The rock beneath the flame was significantly younger and cooler than any known gas-producing shale in the area. So, if the gas isn't coming from the rock right there, where is it coming from? The researchers now believe the gas is seeping from a source much, much deeper, perhaps from a layer of rock over 400 meters below the surface. They hypothesize that there are specific, undiscovered geological pathways, or faults, that are allowing this deep earth gas to travel upwards and vent at this one specific spot. The Eternal Flame Falls, therefore, is not a simple macro seep from the surrounding rock, but a micro seep from a source far below. This makes the flame more than just a curiosity. It's a window into geological processes we don't fully understand. It suggests there may be a previously unknown mechanism for gas production in older, deeper shales. The flame doesn't break the laws of combustion, but it does challenge our understanding of geology and natural gas formation. It's a tiny, flickering beacon that points to vast, unseen processes happening deep within the Earth's crust, a beautiful paradox that reminds us that there are still profound mysteries hidden just beneath our feet. The Petrifying Well. In the town of Knaresborough, England, next to the River Nid, lies a place steeped in myth and legend. It is a dripping cave known for centuries as the Petrifying Well, where any object left in the path of its mineral-rich water is seemingly turned to stone. For hundreds of years, local entrepreneurs have hung everyday objects, teddy bears, hats, bicycles, even a top hat from the Victorian era in the well's cascade. Within a matter of months, these soft or complex items become encased in a hard, stone-like shell, frozen in time. The well's most famous proprietor was Mother Shipton, a 15th century prophetess and witch who was supposedly born in the cave. Her legend imbued the well with supernatural power, and for centuries, people believed the water itself was cursed, capable of transmuting flesh and wood into solid rock. The sight of a once soft teddy bear now as hard as a gargoyle seems to support this magical claim. It appears to be a form of geological alchemy, violating the natural order of things. But the process at work in the Knaresborough Petrifying Well is not magic or a curse. It's just chemistry, operating on an unusually accelerated timeline. The water that flows from the well has journeyed from a deep underground lake, and on its way to the surface, it passes through rock layers that are incredibly rich in minerals, particularly calcite, a form of calcium carbonate. As a result, the water becomes a supersaturated mineral solution. It carries an unusually high load of dissolved minerals, far more than typical spring water. When this water reaches the surface and comes into contact with the open air, the process of evaporation begins. As the water evaporates from the surface of an object, say the fur of a teddy bear, the dissolved minerals are left behind. They precipitate out of the solution and deposit a microscopic layer of calcite onto the object. Drip by drip, minute by minute, this process repeats, building up a new layer of mineral coating with each pass. Over a period of 3 to 12 months, depending on the size and porosity of the object, this accumulation of calcite builds into a thick, hard shell. It's the same process that forms stalactites and stalagmites in caves, but the extreme mineral concentration in Knaresborough's water makes it happen astonishingly fast. The objects aren't truly petrified in the geological sense, where the organic material is replaced by minerals over millions of years. Instead, they are simply encrusted, coated in a thick layer of travertine rock. If you were to crack one open, you'd find the original, now decaying object still inside. The Petrifying Well isn't turning things to stone, it's giving them a stone-like armor in a remarkable display of chemistry in action. The Ringing Rocks of Pennsylvania. In a 10-acre field in Upper Black Eddy, Pennsylvania, lies a geological puzzle that has confounded scientists and delighted visitors for over a century. The field is devoid of vegetation and filled with a vast jumble of boulders, some weighing several tons. This is Ringing Rocks Park, and its name is literal. When you strike these boulders with a hammer, they don't make the dull thud you'd expect from a rock. They ring. They chime with clear, resonant metallic tones like bells forged in the Earth's mantle. The experience is surreal. Walking through the field and tapping on different rocks produces a symphony of different notes. You can play a rudimentary tune by striking a sequence of boulders. For decades, the reason for this bizarre acoustic property was a complete mystery. The rocks themselves are a type of igneous rock called diabase, the same material that forms the Palisades along the Hudson River. Yet the diabase in the Palisades doesn't ring. Something special is happening in this specific field. Early theories were all over the map. Some suggested the arrangement of the rocks created a unique resonant chamber. Others looked for a unique, undiscovered mineral within the boulders. In the 1960s, a Rutgers University geologist brought some of the rocks back to his lab to study them. He found that when he sawed into them, they lost their ability to ring, suggesting the internal stress of the rock was key. When he struck them, he could measure high-frequency sounds that were inaudible to the human ear. He theorized that these frequencies interact in a way that produces the audible ringing sound. The leading theory today combines several factors. First, the rocks are incredibly dense and have very few cracks or imperfections, which allows sound waves to travel through them with little interruption. Second, they are composed of a precise mixture of iron and other hard minerals that contribute to their acoustic properties. But the real key seems to be the slow, controlled weathering process they've undergone. It's believed that as these boulders have been exposed to the elements for thousands of years, a process of spheroidal weathering has slowly released the internal stresses created when they cooled from magma billions of years ago. This slow release of tension has essentially tuned the rocks, allowing them to vibrate at specific, audible frequencies when struck. Not all the rocks in the field ring, only about a third of them do. This suggests that only some have achieved the perfect balance of composition, density, and internal stress relief. The field doesn't break the laws of acoustics. It's a rare geological concert hall where time, pressure, and chemistry have collaborated to create an orchestra made of stone. The sleeping city of Kalachi. In the remote steppes of northern Kazakhstan, the village of Kalachi earned a terrifying nickname, the Sleeping City. Beginning around 2011, its residents began to fall victim to a bizarre and debilitating sleeping sickness. Without warning, men, women, and children would suddenly be overcome by an irresistible urge to sleep, collapsing where they stood, at school, at work, in the middle of a conversation. They would remain in a deep, coma-like sleep for days at a time, sometimes up to a week. When they finally awoke, the nightmare wasn't over. They would suffer from crippling side effects, severe memory loss, vertigo, nausea, and vivid, often terrifying, hallucinations. One child reported seeing flying horses. An adult described snakes crawling in his bed. The condition was cyclical. A person could recover, only to be struck down again weeks or months later. Over a quarter of the village's population of 600 people was affected, creating an atmosphere of constant fear and confusion. The mystery baffled doctors and scientists. They tested for everything: viruses, bacteria, contaminated water, lead poisoning, even radiation. The results all came back negative. The phenomenon seemed to have no logical cause. Some villagers, in their desperation, blamed vodka or a local curse. The situation grew so dire that in 2015, the Kazakh government began a mass evacuation of the village, relocating families to get them away from the invisible menace. The crucial clue lay just across the steppe, the abandoned Soviet-era uranium mine of Krasnogorsk. During the Cold War, this was a secret, bustling town dedicated to mining uranium for the Soviet nuclear program. The mine was shuttered after the collapse of the USSR, but its legacy remained, buried underground. While initial tests for radiation on the surface came back normal, scientists eventually realized they were looking for the wrong thing. The problem wasn't ionizing radiation, it was something far more insidious. The current scientific consensus is that the sleeping sickness was caused by elevated levels of carbon monoxide and hydrocarbons leaking from the decaying mine. During certain atmospheric conditions, like a drop in pressure when the weather changed, these odorless, colorless gases would seep up through the soil and accumulate in the basements and low-lying areas of the village. Carbon monoxide is a notorious poison because it displaces oxygen in the bloodstream, starving the brain of what it needs to function. This lack of oxygen, or hypoxia, perfectly explains the symptoms: the sudden sleep, the dizziness, the hallucinations, the brain fog. The residents of Kalachi weren't cursed, they were being slowly, intermittently poisoned by a ghost of the Cold War. The laws of biochemistry weren't breaking. A forgotten industrial scar was quietly reminding the world of its toxic, lingering power. The moving rocks of Racetrack, Playa. In a remote corner of Death Valley, California, lies one of Earth's most cinematic and long-standing mysteries, the sailing stones of Racetrack, Playa. On the flat, cracked surface of this dry lake bed, massive rocks, some weighing over 300 kilograms, 700 pounds, appear to move on their own. They leave behind long, shallow, and often curving tracks in the mud, sometimes hundreds of meters long. For decades, no one had ever seen them move. They were simply found in new locations, with their telltale trails behind them, as if they were sentient beings slowly traversing the desert floor. The question of how these heavy rocks moved across a flat surface with no apparent external force was a puzzle that captivated scientists for over 70 years. The playa is perfectly flat, ruling out gravity. The winds in Death Valley can be strong, but calculations showed they weren't nearly powerful enough to push rocks of this size and weight. Theories abounded, ranging from the plausible to the paranormal. Some proposed that a thin layer of ice formed on the Playa, in winter allowing the rocks to slide easily when pushed by the wind. Others suggested dust devils, or even pranksters moving the rocks in the dead of night. The mystery was so profound that in 1972, a major research project was initiated. Scientists monitored the rocks for 7 years, tracking their positions meticulously. The rocks moved, but the study ended with no definitive answer. The puzzle endured, becoming a classic example of a seemingly inexplicable natural phenomenon. It wasn't until 2014 that the mystery was finally, definitively solved, not by speculation, but by patience and modern technology. A team of researchers from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography embedded GPS units into several rocks and set up time-lapse cameras overlooking the Playa. Then, they waited. In December 2013, they hit the jackpot. A rare combination of conditions occurred. First, the Playa was covered in a shallow layer of water from recent rains. Then a cold snap caused the water to freeze overnight, forming a thin, window-pane layer of ice just a few millimeters thick. The next day, as the sun came out, the ice began to melt and break up into large, floating panels. What the time-lapse cameras captured was breathtaking. A light breeze, only about 10 miles per hour, began to blow across the Playa. This gentle wind was enough to push the enormous floating sheets of ice. These vast ice panels, acting like sails, then slowly but inexorably pushed the rocks in front of them, which scraped along the soft mud of the lake bed below. The rocks moved at a glacial pace, only about 25 meters per minute, too slow to be easily noticed by the naked eye. The process was a perfect, delicate storm of specific conditions: the right amount of water, the right temperature to form thin ice, and the right light wind to move it. The sailing stones don't defy physics. They are a monument to it, a slow-motion ballet choreographed by ice, wind, and water, a beautiful solution to a mystery that was hiding in plain sight all along.